Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hope for Animals Summit. Today, we have an exclusive bonus interview with Carl Safina and myself, Lisa Levinson. I'm the director of In Defense of Animals Sustainable Activism Campaign, and my co-host, Joan Ranquet, will be conducting this interview with you. We're really looking forward to it today, and thank you to Carl for joining us. I'm going to introduce Carl to everyone, and then Joan will proceed with the interview. So, Carl works to show that nature and human dignity require each other. His recent works probe the ways in which our relationship with the natural world affects human relations and how the scientific facts imply the need for moral and ethical responses. Carl's writing about the living world has won a MacArthur Genius Prize, Pew, and Guggenheim Fellowships, book awards from Lannan, Orion, and the National Academies, and John Burroughs, James Beard, and George Rabb medals. His seabird studies earned a PhD in ecology from Rutgers. He then spent a decade working to ban high seas drift nets and overhaul the United States fishing policy. Safina is now the first endowed professor for nature and humanity at Stony Bridge University, where he co-chairs the Alan Alda Center for Communicating Science and runs the not-for-profit Safina Center. He hosted the PBS series Saving the Ocean. His writing appears in the New York Times, Time, Audubon, and on the web at National Geographic, News and Views, Huffington Post, DNN.com, and elsewhere. He's the author of the classic book, Song for the Blue Ocean. Carl's seventh book is Beyond Words, What Animals Think and Feel. He lives on Long Island, New York, with his wife, Patricia, and their dogs and feathered friends. So we're delighted to have Carl join us today, and my co-host, Joan Ranquet, will continue with the interview.
Okay, thank you so much, Carl. We're so excited to have you. And I just want to point out that I have a very tattered copy of your book because it's gone with me on travels to Africa. And I absolutely love your book and your work, and it's very much an honor to have you here. And part of the purpose of the summit is to have hope for animals, and yet we obviously, in order to be at a place to have hope for animals, we must have a big challenge. And so I'd love to get your take on the challenge moving toward hope, and start with, what drew you to this sort of work?
Well, ever since I was a very small boy, I always loved animals of all kinds, and we always had birds in our house. My father's hobby was breeding canaries, and when I was 7 years old, I started to raise homing pigeons. And I always had lots of creatures that I found and brought home, various pets, things like that. And I always was concerned about conservation of nature because when I was quite young, I learned a word, endangered, and that seemed bad, and I wanted to do something about that when I grew up, and just basically took it from there.
That's awesome. So one of the things that, in this book, you chose elephants and orcas and wolves. What made you move toward them?
I was concerned. I was reading Gay Bradshaw's book called Elephants on the Edge, and I was wondering why it seems to me that killing an elephant or a dolphin. I was reading it on a boat. We were seeing dolphins. Why killing an elephant or a dolphin or an ape seems like murder to me, but other animals, it doesn't seem like murder. Killing a mosquito doesn't seem like murder. Killing a herring doesn't seem like murder. Why does it seem like these other animals seemed different? And I realized that one difference is that there are some animals for whom their individual relationships with the others in their social groups define who they are and define who they are with and for each other. So there are a few animals like that. and I picked 3. I picked the ones that you mentioned to focus on. There are lots and lots of other kinds of animals mentioned in that book. That book is full of dogs and birds and lots of other things.
Yeah, really great story.
But those are the ones I focused on because in those, yes, my dogs, right? In those species, they are individuals. They know who they are. They know who their friends are. They know who their family members are as individuals. So I wanted to focus on them.
Well, that brings me to 2 questions right off the bat. I think about sharks. A shark would know who it is and starts out with its mom, and then sometimes juveniles will hang out together. But do they recognize their mother later on? Are they individuals just out there in the sea, or are they part of a community?
I don't think sharks live in what you would call social groups. Sometimes there are more than one shark together, or in a few cases, very large schools of sharks together. But I don't think that they are identified as individuals to one another. Whereas with some other animals, like dolphins, for instance, they do know each other as individuals. They would remember and recognize each other if they're separate. Well, even if they are separated for up to at least 20 years. We know from things that people have done with aquariums and moving them around that they do remember and recognize one another. I don't think sharks have those kinds of social capabilities. And when some sharks come from eggs, well, the other ones, when they're born live, they just swim away. They don't have a social relationship with their mothers, and I don't think they have social relationships with one another in that way.
Do you believe that animals have souls?
What do you mean by souls? Because different people mean different things with that word.
Well, I guess I would think that it would be some sort of a almost heart-centered individuality that carries out a personality, that carries out a karma, that carries out a journey, a trajectory, a mission, so to speak, a purpose, even if the purpose is just to smile, or to entertain someone. Like one of my dogs is a great entertainer, but I believe there's something in there that is universal, that is, once she dies, it will still be a piece of her floating through the universe, whether it's reincarnates or not.
All right. Well, if you mean an eternal soul, which it sounds like you do mean.
Yeah.
I don't believe there are eternal souls. I don't think people have them, and I don't think they exist. So I don't think other animals have them because I don't think they exist.
Okay. And do you believe that with the individual that that they have a purpose here then in this single lifetime?
It depends what you mean by a purpose. If you mean a purpose given by God or something like that, no, I don't believe those things exist. I think we're here, and I think that most animals have individual personalities, way down what you would think of as the lesser kinds of animals. Individuals still show individual personalities, but a particular purpose, I don't think my purpose on Earth is to work for conservation. I think that that's what's happened with my life because of where and when I was born and the concerns that I have and the opportunities that I had.
What your environment shaped you?
I mean, if I was born in Ghana, I would probably not have a PhD or work in conservation or write books. I might not have ever learned how to write at all. If I was born in 1940 or 1840, I would not be working on conservation. I think we are the products of our biology, our environment, and our time.
Okay, and so one of the things that I love, I want to go to what you said in your TED Talk about animals have been watching us for a long time. And I think that's such a huge thing. So I feel like if as individuals, do you feel like they want to be in relation with us? Or do you feel like they're just watching us because they're trying to suss out their safety?
I think with extremely few, very minor exceptions, which I will explain, I don't think they want anything to do with us. We're a terrible thing for almost everything else that lives on this planet at this point in history. And the less they have to do with us, the better it is for them. Very, very rarely, an animal in trouble will come to people seeking aid. There's a great video on YouTube of a dolphin with a hook in its flipper that comes to some divers. The divers have to work for quite a while to get the hook out. The dolphin has to go up for air, and it comes right back. And it basically lets them take the hook out of its flipper. Now, it's very, very hard to imagine that anything else could be going on other than the dolphin thinks the divers are capable of taking the hook out. It goes to ask for help. It gets help. That's a relationship that it sought in that moment. The other part of the relationship with people is people put a hook in that flipper to begin with. But it is strange that there are some animals, not just dolphins, but even all the way out to manta rays that come to divers repeatedly with fishing gear stuck on them, nets stuck on them, in need of help. They in some way recognize that people are capable of helping them. I don't imagine that they go to sea turtles with hooks in their flipper, hoping that a sea turtle could help them. But they seem to know that humans are capable of this. And this, in a way, runs kind of counter to my feeling that they don't in any way want a relationship with us, because occasionally they seem to recognize that we are capable and we are intelligent enough and aware enough to help them. In that way, they're better than we are, because we generally don't think they're capable of anything. And if they are capable of knowing that we are, then clearly they have capabilities that we totally don't appreciate. But we don't really do anything to be a net gain for almost any living thing on the planet with us, with a few very, very rare exceptions. We're mostly not really good for other living things. Unfortunately, it's a bad thing to say about people, because there are some wonderful things about people. People are really, really interesting and amazing animals in many ways, but we're too much of a good thing. There's 7 billion of us now. It's just there's no room for anything else, and we have a strong tendency to kill everything around us. Collectively as a group, not individually, but collectively, that's what happens around people. So.
And so, do you think that those few individuals? What do you think about when, let's say, a group of people are watching, say, a group of whales, and those whales end up, they're doing what they're doing, but it tends to entertain, or people are wowed by it. Do you think that people's admiration of certain wildlife has an effect on them? Or do you think that
I think sometimes. I mean, I think that killer whales, for instance, when people are watching them jumping around, they seem to get a charge out of all the whooping and screaming. They seem as entertained by us as we are by them, and that does seem to be mutual at times. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, it's easy to look at it and say, well, they're just hunting or they're doing what they're doing, but at the same time, it seems.
Yeah, it does seem that way. I mean, people who've watched them, and I'm not talking about the ones in. I'm not talking about captive ones. I'm talking about wild ones.
Like out at San Juan, I grew up in Seattle, so I know the JK and L pods. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so people have told me that they seem. Yes, they seem to get a kick out of people getting a kick out of them.
Yeah. And so I guess when another question that I have for you before I get to kind of more anything hopeful we could do is, the thing I love is that, you know, a lot of times, even I've been taking people out on dolphin trips, and even the captain of that boat, and who could be out swimming with them, says, oh, we can't give them a name. And I know that was a scientific history, but, you know, it's like, oh, we'll call them, like, you know, K25, and yet people at the Whale Museum have ended up doing things like calling it Scoter or, you know, Camille or
Right.
what, you know, I mean, they've given names. When did that start to happen, and what do you think of? I mean, I know that in the Wolf book, or in the Wolf section of your book, you talked about the butterfly and, you know, things like that were more identifying than, say, a number. When did that start to happen? And
I'm not sure when it started to happen. And I know that I think Jane Goodall probably started it, because Jane's early work was rejected because she named them, and they were insisting that she give them numbers. I can sort of see it both ways. If you have a little baggage about what a name implies about a personality, you might think that a certain name means you have a happier personality or a sunnier disposition. And if you're trying to be, if you're trying to just observe what they are like, maybe they need a neutral designation. But even when they get a neutral designation, like a number, they become known by that number. So the number becomes their name. You know, L46 is the name of L46. Wolf 21 or Wolf 755, the people there refer to them, they might as well be calling them Alan and Dorothy, because they know them as 21 and 755. Those become their names. And so I think it can introduce a certain kind of bias if you bring some baggage with a name, but I think it's minor, because if you named a rosebush Dorothy, you wouldn't think that the rosebush had, you know, a personality that you would identify with Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. You wouldn't do that, right? I have a very hard time remembering anybody's name, and one of the reasons I do is because, to me, names are completely arbitrary. My name is Carl. My name could be Bob. My name could be Jimmy. It's a totally arbitrary thing. So I don't put much in names one way or another. And I don't really think it matters scientifically or not. I think for some people, there's a certain, I guess I would call it a pseudo-scientificness about making these rules. Oh, you can't name them. Well, you could name them, or you could number them. I don't think it matters too much, really. They're who they are. We need to see them for who they are. That's the biggest problem, is we don't see them for who they are. And whether we call them by a letter or a number or what, I think is it doesn't matter too much.
Well, when that one wolf was identified as Butterfly, I saw exactly who it was. It's somebody that's going to work the crowd, right? Good or bad, or, you know, she had her little way of having to do her thing, and that isn't always a great thing. I mean, I get that it isn't a sunny disposition because she's a butterfly. It's that she knows how to work the room. So I guess
actually she was named for her facial markings. She wasn't named for her personality.
That's funny. And yet it seems like there was a certain part of her that
she had a personality. Like all of them, she had a personality that, you know, that came through.
Yeah. That's really funny that she was named for her facial markings. I love that.
Yeah.
So what would you say, like, we look at, you know, we have a big problem up in the Pacific Northwest with the lack of salmon and the sound pollution with the shipping and all of that. What would be something, after your experience of being up there and knowing that there's hormonal problems from what is going out into the sea, what are some things that our takeaways for the audience as far as hopeful things that we could be doing or we're learning about in order
Well,
to help protect.
we're learning, I think, that we have a very broken relationship with the rest of the living world, and that there are real beings out there who are really capable of having lives. They have lives, and we often give them very bad lives because of what we do to them. You know, those orcas in the Northwest there are short of food. They're starving. They're full of chemicals. We've really messed them up a lot. And I could go on and list many species who have gigantic problems. I mean, there's a reason that we are in this major extinction spike that we're in right now, where species are going extinct 1,000 times faster than they were going extinct, let's say, right before the Industrial Revolution in, let's say, 1700. 1,000 times faster. We need to understand that we are part of a living world, and we need to leave room for these other things. And that is strictly an ethical conclusion, because we don't need them to be alive. They need us to be alive at this point. They cannot survive unless we change how we're doing things. We could live without orcas. We could live without elephants. There are no elephants in North America or South America or Australia. People live perfectly fine in those continents. We don't need them. But at this point, they need us to pay attention, because we are wiping them off the face of the earth. And we have to forge a completely different orientation to who we are, who they are, and how we live in the world.
So really recognizing that they have family systems, family structures, that they have entire ways of being that have nothing to do with us, is like seeing them in their natural habitat or learning more about them in their natural habitat is a place to start for people.
I think that is a place to start for people, because we can relate to them well if we understand that they live in families like we live in families, because we have to make a little tiny bridge between us and them to make little tiny baby steps, because that's how the human mind works. But the more basic thing is they belong in the world as much as we belong in the world. And we have no justification of any kind for wiping them off the face of the earth. We simply can do it, and it's quite easy for us to do it at this point, and it's being done. And it's quite possible, but there's no justification for it. We're bankrupting the biological endowment of this planet, the only planet that we know that has life, and the only planet we're ever going to have that has life that we live on. I mean, this is home. So the idea that they've been here for many millions of years, and we show up and we think that we can decide one way or another whether they can continue being here, is just completely morally bankrupt. It's just completely hollow, and yet that's often how a lot of people think about it.
Do you have any ideas of how people could spread the word or share other than?
Well, there are lots
reading
of
your book about families.
Reading the book is one thing to start, but reading the book doesn't help the animals. What helps the animals is joining conservation groups, giving money to land trusts, supporting candidates who want to do something good about the environment, not candidates who want to put as a head of the EPA somebody who hates the environmental protections that took decades to put in place.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things that make a difference, and those are the things everybody has to do.
Well, I can't thank you enough. This has been a real thrill for me personally, and also a great thing for the animals. So thank you so much for joining us. And
well, thank you very much. It was a great honor for me to be with you today.
And I would like to also extend a thank you from In Defense of Animals for sharing your wise words of wisdom with us today, Carl. We really appreciate it, and I think all of our Hope for Animals Summit listeners will also enjoy this special feature.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.